You know that guy that you and your buddies caught stepping out of his apartment for a quick smoke? You broke the ice, found out he was cool, ending the evening on a good note that you chill sometime. Then 4 years come to pass without seeing hide nor hair of the man that you quickly found kinship with that night. What happened to him?
Open up! Open this goddamn door!
Who could that be? And just in time to share in this fortuitously large buffalo chicken pizza? It's him. For the first time in many moons, he stands before you, nude. He had converted to a religiously suicidal cult who also believed that they must shed all forms of superficiality. Horrified. Against your better judgment, though, for the sake of sating your need to brave the unknown, you look down. Did I lose you? Is this a little too hard to relate to? Too many questions? Huh?
You know, just surviving.
No, hold on.
How's it going?
Surviving.
I knew it! Leon and Claire are back, her ass cheeks go clap, and Ben's head goes They do it.
We do it.
They do it. After meticulous consideration carrying over the tiniest of details, Biohard Re:2 is here to remind you of the things that weren't relevant to you when you were a child, yet act ironically forlorn over. 1998's Resident Evil 2 was, kind of a big deal. It certainly left its impression upon me in some subtle and, not so subtle ways. Oh, hey, that's me. And, yeah, you know, I kinda like it. The vivid imagery of a dilapidated police station that, at the same time, retains an eerie sense of sterility, punctuated by the draw of neon signs or the yawn of shadows, have played a key role in cementing a unique aesthetic RE2 can call its own, at times framed to near perfection. Couple that with superb pacing, a proper balance between scraping by the skin of your teeth and living out a power fantasy, and the unrelenting necessity to scrounge for resources in the interest of living up to the daunting reputation of survival horror, and suffice to say, the remake has big shoes to fill. But if anyone has ever told you that RE2 comes from humble beginnings, they're fucking wrong. Not only was the original crew tasked to make a follow-up to a hot new IP on the scale of James Cameron's Aliens, but it was Kamiya's first gig as a director. Yeah, no pressure. Even under the guidance of Shinji Mikami, they found themselves facing an uphill struggle that, in the game's earliest incarnation, Kamiya would look back on and flat out call it a piece of shit. The team had lost hope when a year of development went up in smoke after Noboru Sugimura of Kamen Rider fame verbally dropkicked Mikami and Kamiya with his feedback. And you need to remember that a year of development back in the 90s was a big deal. This was before 5-year dev cycles were the norm. Sugimura suggested that they should take what they could salvage and start over. After he'd been brought on board to rewrite everything from character motivations to the world logic, that's exactly what they did. When they finally got their bearings straight, RE2 would go on to achieve that groundbreaking ambition with flying colors, just as Capcom had wished for. You know, real humble shit. Then people would downplay that years later by complaining about tank controls, because that's how that works. Hey, we OTS now, baby. Casual train came in. Wait, hold up. Is this the Fortnite buzz? Where we drop? Hey, could you fucking stop? Oh, well. This is unfortunate. Yeah, that E3 trailer made me nervous. Yeah, I was concerned for the pace of combat and the scale of difficulty for the game. Am I a baby now? Do I need things to be more intuitive? What was Capcom... What were they trying to say about my gaming cock? And I was wrong. Thank God. My massive gamer cock and rest in peace. The translation from tank to over the shoulder firmly keeps to a list of checks and balances to ensure a familiar sense of pace and tension when you take aim to make the right shot with the right gun at the right time. Sure, drawing your gun no longer roots you in place and you can fire at will, but if you want your shots to count, every last chunky, meaty, flesh-serrating shot, you'll need to stand your ground. With the exception of the Lightning Hawk's red dot sight and the JMB HP3, handguns and automatic carbines retain a dependency on the reticle to collapse, heightening your accuracy, which sure as shit pays off. And though you're still encouraged to swap weapons to decimate the undead and finish them off with handgun rounds, the practicality of sweeping the room with superior firepower has dwindled. Aside from grenades. Oh, yeah, did I mention there's grenades? They're good. Use them. The shotgun still favors getting up nice and close in the kissing distance to decapitate, dismember, or get the most use out of your buckshot. In that regard, it's not changed. Now that normal grenade rounds are absent, the grenade launcher serves to systemically pick things apart from a distance so that you can laugh at them as they fall to pieces and swim around in their own mess. Just as it should be, the better you know the game and your guns, the better you can juggle your ammo. It even boiled down to whether I should reserve my gunpowder for lesser or greater firearms. Maybe I should favor making shells for crowd control or magnum rounds for bosses. I wound up forsaking hornets entirely for acid rounds. Oh, and thank God for second run drowning you in 45 so that you don't have to worry about mixing up any extra parabellum on your own. All of these changes, of course, weren't made haphazardly. It's all made to accommodate the heightened threat of everything that lurks in the dark. Much like a teen locked in a studio, tasked with explaining to Eddie Hermida and Tekashi 69 that the premise of Growing Pains is not meant to be arousing, You're nothing but fresh meat trapped with beast of prey. Monsters swing and lunge faster, they bite and swipe harder, everything will try to close the distance between themselves and you with greater urgency. This world wants you dead, and it's relentless. At least, it's relentless with a few caveats. Each creature has a set of rules they must abide. Believe me, you'll be granted plenty of opportunities to get acquainted with them. Just what doors can a zombie break down? How useful is a desk between me and them? How much of a disturbance does a licker tolerate and when does it leash? How many spots can keep a dog at bay? Was it worth retrofitting flashbangs into the Oh yeah. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. Every threat operates in such a consistent manner that I was eventually letting Ivies grab me after letting them ablaze so that when they inevitably catch up, I won't need to use a defensive item to free myself. Or hell, I'll be using the emerge and submerge animation of G-adults to pass right on by them as safely as possible because fuck poison. No, really, fuck poison. So while it's true that you're snappier and more capable than in Classic, even to the point that RE2's knife is finally useful, I suppose it had its day in the sun with Brad. But he's looking a little flat in the remake. Everything else will meet you in kind with terrifying capability. I mean, can we talk about the damage output real quick? Unless if the DA is scaled in your favor, one bite from a zombie on standard sends you straight into caution. Again, for the sake of compensating for the controls and camera style of Classic, Leon and Claire were a few degrees shy of a steel brush pincushion. You can throw that luxury right out the fucking window. And to top it off, zombies don't even have the patience to wait one at a time. They'll pile up on you or drag you down by any means. They'll even nip at your feetsies as a last resort. Shit, even dogs petrified me with their mock speed darting, and Christ, even fences can't hold them back. If you let them, they'll bite whole chunks out of your ass. Adjacent to dogs, lickers. You get it? Godspeed if they hear the clap of your ass. Here's some advice. Flashbang. Gone are the spiders. A little other presents have been left behind while the G-adults got busy. You know, springtime and all that. Oh. Unless if you know how to pop and dodge them, which isn't always an option, they're either going to strain your resources or see to it that your belly serves as a nest. The aforementioned Ivy don't even bother spitting up acid or poison as they used to. Now they just shimmy their tight little ass towards you and kiss you like your favorite Jav. Back in Classic, you used to confront Spooky Dookie skittering beneath the kennel, but you know that shit got stomped. Despite that, the remake scatters blue orbs within the PD, far before you ever touch the sewers. Thankfully, it's for a damn good reason. Gone are the days of blue orb strictly curing poison. 1998 too is kinda tight. Mix a blue orb and red herb and that nets you a defense bonus. Doesn't last forever, but it will get you through some pretty desperate situations. Also in 1998 too, Xenogears never had its budget bled into the fat maw of Final Fantasy VIII. The placement of herbs and ammo, powder, keys, and whatever else you can stuff into your expandable pouches help dictate your moment-to-moment decision making when you're facing both visible threats or the unknown. At times, the two are interchangeable. Classic was no different in this regard. If anything, the tangible emphasis on placing each item and enemy within the circuit of an assiduously satisfying map to tread with the express purpose of molding an expertly dictated ebb and flow has been transferred in near identical fashion to the remake. Through both the process of elimination and the courage to satisfy a need to explore, the map blossoms, cradling you with safe havens, building your courage with portions of minimal resistance, or at times overwhelming you in an effort to dump your ammo and herbs. And if you're feeling brave, hone your ability to weave through the hordes of undead. It's the kind of game that when I turn it off and lie down, it plays back in my head what stood between me and where I last left off. I begin to reflect on how much more efficient I could be, how much I could improve my approach for the next time, what windows I should opt for boarding up, how much ammo I need to spend and on what. The layout is burned into my brain and I thank the gods for every critical headshot that I'm blessed with. Shit, at no point will the game even hold you back from getting your hands on an upgrade barred behind a lock so long as you know where it is and how to get it. Not one note is required, no story-enforced upgrade. Got the key to the trunk? Use it. Know the combination? All yours. The only thing that's standing between you and an upgrade is if you have access to that area as of yet. And trust me, it's never worth skipping out on upgrades if you're playing casually. Between upgrading the SLS into a full-fledged Magnum or the W870 into fucking Dendrobium's Mega Beam Cannon. Worth it. Shame that they no longer hide the custom shotgun parts of Beta's ass though. Cowards. Curiously, the sewers were fleshed out to a far greater extent than what they once had been. Prior, they were a brief stroll through a caged portion of map that had very little to offer. Now they're sprawling and they demand a very different challenge. The impressive part is that once you know what you're doing, you can slosh through them comically fast. It might be one of the single most noticeable portions of the game where you can witness your improvement with routing. It's also worth mentioning that the labs were cut back a bit, but they weren't cleaved to the point of being dramatically shorter than what they were in the original RE2. Some have expressed that they lament the changes made to both the sewers and the nest. The layout is far from the same. No spiders, no roaches, no moth, not even a speck of crows on the second floor East Hall. I get where they're coming from, but I don't share their sentiment. Bar from the moth, come on. Okay, that was kind of a bastard move. What the fuck is this? But in all honesty, I felt that they were held together pretty well by their core mechanic of dealing with G-adults while juggling chest plugs or Ivy and priming the P-Epsilon, even if they pale in comparison to one thing. You know how I was just waxing poetically about the map design, enemy placement, understanding how to deal with monsters, managing your ammo and all that? Yeah, he's the guy that's about to put all that to the test. The Tyrant was once a daunting, if not underutilized though, fun jump scare, built to push you out of a room more quickly or force you to take a stand. He was reserved solely for the B route, which meant some people never so much as saw the guy. I mean, we know how some people are the moment they see credits scroll on by. Now this motherfucker shows up on your first run, even sooner in your second, won't stop pursuing you, punches fools that stand between you and him, face looks like a nutsack, and you cannot kill him. The most you can ever do is make him take a knee for but a few seconds or stun him with a flashbang. Every minute detail of his body language communicates the towering threat that he is. This man is thirsty for your blood and he'll stop at nothing to bleed you dry. Unless, if you find a safe spot. There aren't many of them, but a few spots scattered about serve as a sanctuary from his madness. Some more obvious than others, but just like any other creature, he has his own set of rules which he must abide. Rule number 1 is that he must keep stomping until I come. Given some time, you'll be able to gauge when you can act a bit more reckless and haul ass through the PD or risk the cacophony of gunfire. Before long, you'll even bait out his punches so that you can swerve him without getting thrown back down on your ass. Sometimes, when the stars align, he can even be a bro. Thanks, man. What a nice guy. And after hours of the stomping bug-eyed nutsack chasing you into fat-ass liquors, knocking your teeth out, breaking walls like this bitch pays rent, all points converge as conviction clashes with the desperate in one final hot, seeping swell of chaotic ejaculate. There you stand. A sovereign pylon, paragon of truth, harbinger of retribution. A fucker-upper. The tyrant's dead, as if you've disrobed a drape of fire ants from your shoulders. You have triumphed. Man, it would be a real shame if Claire didn't. Oh, yeah, no girls allowed. I guess. Yeah, I guess being a woman, she would need help cutting out the middleman. Oh god! Oh, holy shit! What the hell is that? Get it away! If you were expecting boss encounters to play out like they once had, where, standing your ground as you plow through walls of meat with superior firepower, yeah, you aren't gonna make it very far. Mismanaging your resources or missing your acid rounds point blank on G-Dolt like I did aside, go me. Very few engagements required you to haul even a modicum of ass. Though the few that had demand as such would righteously punish you by being turned into a chew toy or getting knocked the fuck out. Now you get knocked the fuck out in 4K! Every boss encounter puts a greater emphasis on keeping you moving, given that the controls have changed and... yeah, all this sound familiar? God, it's like an Oscar bait accolade splash. I feel like we've been here before. I think you get the picture. Though the boss fights are more demanding of you in Remake than previously, the core interplay between you and the boss is somewhat bare bones, bar a gimmick here or there. And yet, I don't care. Honestly, I enjoyed the hell out of each boss encounter. They provided a sharp burst of excitement and anxiety to grant me a break from the near constant verge of a heart attack I had been on while dealing with the rest of the game. Yeah, shit's simple, but didn't do anything poorly. I mean, we're talking about me here, the guy who gives Alundra's combat a pass since it's serviceable without detracting from Alundra as a whole. Thankfully, there's more to take away from these fights than the cold observation that all they serve is to break the pace and dump your collective ammo stock. Details such as the rearranged callbacks to the fact that Birkin is visibly suffering and cries out for help, to the petrifying violence of G Stage 5's entrance, deforming the train card as the ebullient mass floods inward, corrupting the walls of nuclear emergency. Oh my god. That spicy little ungulous breed machine had my back pinned to the wall in overwhelming hopelessness the first time I faced him. The only thing standing between me and 11 inches of inevitable death were a Colt single-action army, a few trays of 45, my panic, and Claire's gigantic balls. It was one of those moments framed to near perfection. As soon as I could, I ran straight to his slot in the model viewer, and Christ, it was like some behind-the-scenes movie magic shit. G5 not only demonstrates the impressive technology R&D Division 1 had on hand, it's a goddamn testament to their artistry. I'm sure that in getting this far, you've caught on to the remake's grotesque and macabre beauty. The art direction is easily one of the most telling expressions of this team's adoration for the classic, and in no one aspect do they fall short of anything less than stellar, but fuck me, the creature designs really get me gushing. Birkin's never looked better, especially G3, my personal favorite mutation. The conveyance of his feral deterioration is on point, right down to his body practically buckling under its own tremendous strength. Stage 4 G forfeit the dog-like posture, which sucks, because now he no longer resembles my fat bitch of a cat when she goes to lay down for a fat break. Likewise, the G-type and dogs have been brought to life with greater detail, but no less faithfulness to their original incarnation. The Ivy being one exception, as it got an interpretive overhaul centered around body horror. What's now the twitching remains of humans assimilated by Plant 43's need to breed were once a bouquet of highly depressed and very stoned Kermits. But hey, if that's got you down, some zombies are straight up full recreations of their concept art from Classic. Check it out, we got Red Shirt Zombie. Yeah, she's nice. It's nice to see her. We got that cop zombie with the one bulging eye. And oh yeah, we got Lickers.
Show that ass off!
No, but seriously, Lickers are the reason I even bought RE2 to begin with. That's not even a joke. I recall a render of one plastered on the side of a page while reading up on a preview for the game in PSM, and I fell in love. They honest to god have one of my all-time favorite designs, like Doppelganger fucked a xenomorph and gave birth to it in a vat of acid. Right, the xenomorphs have acid for blood. Wait. So, to see that they were given the very same faithful treatment as every other creature in this game just warms my tiny black heart and only reaffirms to me the painstaking love that went into Remake. Whoa, hey, we haven't put my gag reflex to the test yet, we ain't getting off that fellatio train. Front to back, this entire project permeates with the same level of craftsmanship. From the remade to the reimagined, every square inch oozes with cemented purpose and only ever aids in the persistent soul-sapping atmosphere. The police station retains this feeling of defiled asceticism, seamlessly woven in with halls and rooms that remind you, oh yeah, this was a museum, draped in an escalating sense of fallout the further away you trek from the sanctuary or the main hall. Beyond the PD, everything still feels as if it belongs. The rain-slicked streets leading up to Kendo's shop and everything behind it sits just as naturally now as it had before, though given an air of desolation that's long settled in. It's a less congested, though no less dangerous beat of breath before the abrasively fucked up orphanage or the frantic sprint through the waist-high sewage to escape our old friend, the overgrown alligator. By the time you hit the sewers, it becomes obvious how determined they were to revise them as a more authentically rancid wade through shitwater, nearly unrecognizable to what they once were, aside from, a spot here or there. Likewise, that same observation screams down the mechanical shaft, barreling violently before the lab as the Nest factory-like aesthetic has been entirely uprooted in favor of a pristine, sterile design that gives off the impression that it would be more befitting for testing and mass-producing contaminants and mutagens. Complete with the mandatory, is that a motherfucking Paul W.S. Anderson reference? Yeah! Though, for as much as things may have changed, there's a constant which had been set in stone by the classic which is always present in the remake. Neons that rest as the unsettling torches that guide your path, and the mauve shadows which the undead moan mindlessly from within, clawing out at you. I spoke at great length that the creatures want to swallow you whole, and as such, so does the very world itself. It's far from divorced from the gameplay. Gore is replicated to an exhausting degree, not only serving to delineate the damage you've done, but to scorch the undead by your relentless artillery or leave bits of brain matter stuck to your surroundings. And they won't think twice about pitting you against threats in pitch-black darkness, producing moments where the lighting strength can be seen by the muzzle flash of your firearm, or even catch on to delicate details such as how you'll tuck the flashlight between your chin and shoulder while reloading. Even the sound of every bullet cutting into the flesh of that which just won't die spells out the danger you're in. Hell, if the sound of Mr. X stomping around and dogs barking as they have you surrounded wasn't enough to engrave the danger you're in, you can't even stand in the comfort of loneliness without hearing something sentient shifting its weight from above. Though, as much as I appreciate the ambience, and the ambient music in general, I can't say I appreciated that I had to strain to hear most of it. Even when I could hear it, it struck less of a chord with me than in Classic. It just carried a more consistent, unique weight with it than what Remake has to offer. It's kinda odd considering I know for a damn fact Capcom isn't slacking on music. DMC5 was released shortly after, and that incorporates a phenomenal OST. The soundtrack is by no means bad. Enemy themes unnerve the few waning strands of confidence I have, but aside from moments of panic or turning on the light to a save room, most of the notable music was reserved for bosses and get your ass back here, Birkin. I still got spit in my throat, I'm not done sucking your dick. The boss themes do a fantastic job of informing the story. Each engagement with Birkin escalates in tone, starting off like a lamb locked in a cage with a lion, then later on expressing this even ground for which you now stand. It's by this point After the hell you've been through, Claire radiates with inexorable metal. She leaps into Birkin's pit, threatening to mop up the floor with his corpse. Then kill him again, but now in front of his daughter. Then kill him again, in front of his daughter. Again. Or if Leon's up to bat, he'll just get volunteered into the pit like a nerd. God, I love him. I got a question. What fucking right does RE2 have in being so sharply written and voice acted?
You are gonna be so fucking sorry!
Fucking what? Alright, wait, look. I'm sure as hell not gonna make the claim that classic RE2 had bad voice acting, because it didn't. In fact, it stands out as one of its numerous pillars of quality, but keep in mind, it's as 1998 as you can get.
Who are you?
Ada Wong.
And what are you doing here?
That means everyone has to play up and front load their characteristics while acting out their dialogue, because there's little to no room for subtlety. You can't say anything with an expressionless face. So, say farewell to nuance. But now we live in an age where a character's glance, the way they roll their eyes, turn their lips, tilt their heads, can all work in unison with their words. This leads to a manipulative character coming off as much more shrewd, a child being frightened in a more convincing manner, or an officer who changes his tone based on if he's speaking to a civilian as opposed to a fellow cop.
If you see one of those things, no matter who they were, you can't hesitate. Take them out if you can. Or you run. And don't make my mistake. If you see one of those things, uniform or not, you do not hesitate. You take it out. Or you run. Got it?
Sorry, but it looks like your party has been canceled.
I mean, Marvin went from cracking jokes on death's door to a cop who cares about the way he carries his authority based on who he's working with. The tone of his voice, his attitude, and even his expressions are all taken into consideration. His every interaction with Leon and Claire grants them reprieve or momentum. He's the first solid thing they have a chance to ground themselves with after failing to save Daniel and Elliot. The two of them can be blamed for their trepidatious approach in the face of, a localized apocalypse. They need to psych themselves up, and they need guidance and long-term goals to fixate on. And that's where Marvin comes in. They're dead set on saving his life, pressing the matter more than once, even after he's made it clear that he's resigned to his fate. Though he may be lucid about his encroaching on death, it doesn't stop him from doing the right thing and aiding their escape. It made it that much more painful to leave him for dead, than then to put him at rest. Despite how perceptively hokey RE2 may be, which it undeniably is, I felt these beats in the story enforced its own themes with an impressive display of care. Kendo confronts Leon. He's at wit's end, desperate to protect what he loves most in this world. He's lost his wife, and his daughter's health is in a state of rapid decay. Ada does not hesitate to draw her gun, ready to kill for their preservation. Up until this point, Leon has suffered a harrowing night. Helplessly watched on as innocents were torn into, had trouble keeping the dead down, lost someone he could trust, all to end up with one that he can't, though she's twice now saved his ass. A few hours of experience up to this point has allowed me to empathize, but Kendo's been dealing with this for a week. He feels abandoned, and with everything he fought for slipping through his hands, he wants to retain agency over what little he has left. And at no point does Leon let this confrontation escalate any higher than it had begun. When he speaks of seeking to help people like Kendo, scorning Ada for withholding the truth from some poor sap who wants answers before he kills his own child out of mercy, Leon practically radiates with a sense of justice. Naive as Leon may be, he's nevertheless disciplined. His every action taken is beholden to him working with the facts that he has on hand. Even if he can't take Ada's word for gospel, their symbiotic reliance on one another cultivates a substantial camaraderie between the two, leading not only to a well-earned blossoming romance, but to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's been forward. It takes the likes of Annette, a figure with authority on the matter of what the hell broke loose, to plant a seed of reasonable doubt in Leon for him to finally challenge Ada on the matter. Claire, on the other hand, she...
I'll get you, you fucker!
Claire is fucking awesome. Marvin sparks that glimmer of heroism in her, but Sherry's the catalyst which inspires her to ascend the passionate firestorm that she embodies. Her gin with William is leagues more personal as she's taken on the role of a surrogate mother for Sherry, cleaving through whatever she must to ensure her survival. I mean, what better incendiary than Chief Irons coming in hot, forsaking all manners of bullshit. Christ! It's kind of cool how he now acts closer to how he's described in the Secretary's diary. Oh my god, I may actually die. You will spend an uncomfortable amount of time dealing with this man, who serves to orbit the poor girl, heartlessly using her as leverage. It's not like Sherry lets that time go to waste, though. She puts her craftiness into action just as she had to get out of her own house. Vindictive as Claire may be, hungering for retribution, she'd sooner save as many lives as she can rather than kill even the likes of Irons in cold blood. By the time she arrives to make her exchange with the Chief, she's fully willing to forfeit the pendant. But I mean, he won't have much use for it anymore. Get moving. Even Annette can't escape Claire's verbal wrath when she finds out that she's Sherry's mom, and she's like, why aren't you protecting your daughter, you dumb bitch? Hey, could you fuck off? Annette's not without justification, convinced that Sherry was safe at home while on the hunt for William to ensure he's eradicated. In contrast to Leon's campaign, she's been fleshed out in Claire's as she takes on a recurring role, again, because all roads lead back to Sherry. Much like with Irons, Claire is distinctly absent to self-righteous piety as Annette lies on the floor, slowly dying while her daughter, who's in arm's reach, weeps as her heart shatters. Claire is even willing to carry her to honor Sherry's request until Annette departs the means to ensure her daughter's safety, knowing she won't make it otherwise. And at the risk of sounding terribly morbid, that's what I love about this game. Nah, not about to crank the wank of emotional torture porn, but rather the ever-present dawn of hope crowning the necropolis regardless of how dire things may be. Keep in mind that this is a game set in the West as envisioned by the East, retelling the story of what once represented its own main protagonist as born action heroes, one of which is allegedly a trained officer despite the fact that he doesn't know how to use his own shoulder stock, comically skidding back every time he fires off his shotgun. I'd even say that they were just a few degrees shy of mishandling kendo. If that scene cropped up any sooner, it would have been just another sad dad moment that gets mocked for its blatant grief puppeteering, sparing us an anemic setup just to indulge in some shameless pathos. Instead, they were patient and reserved it for when the time was just right. They chose not to linger on it for too long, and it served to reinforce the selflessness of our hero while rebuking his partner's cold temperament. In the face of its peers, it was refreshing to see the remake retain an optimistic tone instead of kicking off the end of the world with authority figures as written by Waypoint. But I digress. I don't really want to prattle on too much about the environmental storytelling or the file entries, since I don't really want to rob you of those little moments that could spark excitement or chill you based on the implications after you've taken the time to digest some diary entries. I can't help the little grin it evokes when I realize who's being referred to from one file, catching on to the fate of another, or realizing that the person who hid the number pad keys was just a dickhead. Jesus Christ. I'll admit that I do kinda miss the more robust and ranty nature of the classic files. Hearing a secretary complain about Iron's teeth-gritting abrasiveness, or a watchman who found solace in playing chess with a quiet man who works at the scrapyard painted a much more tangible world of normalcy to contrast the glorified mausoleum it's become. But hey, the story of Wayne Lee more than makes up for it. What a champ. What a hero. What a god. There were a few inconsequential retcons here or there. The explanation for Mr. X's presence got altered slightly, but not enough to warrant outrage. If I recall, it wasn't invasive in the slightest. Let's see. T-103, codename Tyrant. I suspect Umbrella has set loose the T-103, a mass-produced model from a series they refer to as T-00, who channels the data from Co, whom pilots the prestigious RX-78 GPO-1. Nina Aho came up with that line while I was lying in bed. Forgot it the next day. Kept thinking it had something to do with fried chicken. Came back to me later that day because I was playing DMC5. You know, the Gerber GPO-1. Bad habit they got going there, those Lux Edition bonuses. How much that shit cost? Oh, wait, only $7? Wait, hold on, let me get rid of my bad joke. Okay, this one too. Oh, yeah, you know me, I wasn't all too thrilled to find out that the extra costumes were barred behind a paywall. Sure, you can unlock their dressed-down models and classic costumes. They're great, at least Leon's is. Claire's is all sorts of fucked up, and even more so, I adore the shit out of the 98 low-poly costumes. You know I love me some low-poly models. It's like the MILF tag of aesthetics. You know, simple, kinda aged, but it's blunt and honest. Fucking sexy. In truth, I'm not only disappointed that you have to pay for costumes at all in Resident Evil, but also the lack of any garish yet badass biker gear that you have to fight tooth and nail for through Brad's massive, throbbing health pool. Come on, you know Daddy needs his leather. Els is cool though, she can stay. I guess now's a good time as any to air the rest of my nitpicks, and I need to emphasize that any grievance I air is, in fact, nitpicking. Things like turning the HUD off Hydra reticle, which means that you can't see it collapse, which in turn makes it tough as shit to hit anything, so I wish I could just simply turn off each HUD element individually. Also makes it a hell of a lot more difficult to spot items lying about due to how well they blend in with the environment. I also feel that the Survivor Mode display screen was a missed opportunity to call back to the very stylish and moody EX Battle character select. That shit was tight, or hey, they should have put crows on the third floor balcony. They're by no means vital since they had so little impact on Classic, but if you could have fit them anywhere appropriately, they would have been there. But I'll be real, I miss the deep-fried nudist more than the crows. Just about the only thing I felt was a genuine letdown was that ink ribbons were an exclusive stipulation for hardcore mode. I missed them in standard, which had just the right difficulty tuning all around, but it felt undermined by allowing me to use the checkpoint system as a crutch. I prefer needing to juggle the appropriate use of ribbons with the threat of death enforcing how efficiently I should be playing. It would have fit perfectly with standard, given that hardcore feels built around a second tour as opposed to a first. Oh, Pokey. You can finally see it for the soulless demake that it is. Well, I mean, Ada's death was much more cooler in Classic. Even had a face-off with the Tyrant, and that was sick. Man, she got fucked up. I especially love the framing of their kiss juxtaposed to the chaos. Wait, you know what? You might be onto something. Yeah, nah. Still love them both. Whether if the original would retain some strengths over the remake was never a question. It's a game that brandishes its production values with pride and took its criticisms to heart during development, never diluting itself from the harsh truth. So, yeah, sure. Iron's death was more metal, the music more punctual, there were more fun hidden quirks, and it told 4 unique variations of the same story which provided significant payoff through the zapping system. At one point, you're faced with the weighty choice of either expanding your inventory, looting an SMG, or doing neither, or both. Whatever you choose will affect how the follow-up playthrough fares. Hell, one of my favorite moments was registering the second guest print so that you can raid Birkin's lab. You can't replicate that feeling of accomplishment without zapping, which the remake failed to evoke that same chilling fascination once I was there. The pizza did, though. Still looks fresh, but the grease solidified like a coat of amber to preserve it. You know that shit's not on their menu, right? Who's assigned to go out on pizza runs? Was it Wayne Lee? The god? There are some out there who feel let down on a personal level. They see the newer iteration as a piece that fails to understand the point of the original, or that it's in some way a myopic production due to the absence of zapping. I get where they're coming from, and to some degree even share in feeling a little let down with how similar the first and second run play out. It's when the sentiment that the remake is entirely unfaithful to the classic arises that I find myself parting ways. They often cite the first remake for what set their expectations, and you can bet your ass I agree with that. It's what most of us requested from R&D Division 1 when they asked us what we wanted, and I still to this day hold it as the gold standard for what defines a picturesque remake. I've said as much. But do you know what the first remake does that the second avoids? Steps on the toes of what came before. It may surprise you how often the temperament is echoed that the remake invalidates the original, unaware that the pacing, atmosphere, and challenge are grossly unique to one another. Here, however, they built a simulationist reimagining. It complements the original as a companion piece rather than a replacement. And I feel like that notion is no better demonstrated in just how polished the first and second campaigns are, despite their overwhelming similarity. Am I saying the game wouldn't be even greater with 4 stories and zapping? No, who in their right mind would? But do you think RE2 Classic is only as good as it is because of the 4 unique scenarios? I don't think so. Even if it just were Claire A and Leon B, it would remain as one of my all-time favorites. Not to mention I never put much stock in the bonus modes. Everything else was just icing on the cake. You know, some are just so fixated on only accepting a remake the likes of the first and... God bless him for it. Oh, but Pokey... Square dropped CyberConnect 2, it's all in-house now. After all this, does that give you more faith in the 7 remake? Well, my mother always told me if I have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Do you think Nomura fucked Hiroshi Matsuyama's wife? I'm just pulling your leg. You should have seen the look on your face, you were all, oh. It looks wildly better than before, and I'm a hell of a lot more hopeful towards it now. Still skeptical, but it looks like it's shaping up nicely. There is a tremendous amount of painstaking detail in this game wrapped within the comforting sense of ever-present love and adoration. I couldn't shake that feeling between the breaks necessary to calm my nerves, and their celebratory discussion only further reinforced my feeling of genuine care. If you've not seen it, I suggest taking the time to watch the roundtable they put out, in which they reflect on the success of the game through talking about their experiences during development over some drinks. It's heartwarming and offers a hell of a lot more insight into the production and their intentions than the rest of us on this godforsaken site can provide, who either suck its dick or trash it. Me included, since I fall squarely into the former. There will always be a special place in my heart for a scornful Leon who just wants people to listen to him, or a Claire who's a little aggressive with trying to appear friendly to children. Or a Chief Irons that can be bribed for only $10,000, what the fuck? And it couldn't be any more clear to me that it's the very same for them as well. I mean, for Christ's sake, they retained the fact that they authorized the one illiterate fuck in the office to spell out "Welcome Leon." And oh yeah, JoJo reference. And above all else, I feel the remake is a love letter, not just to the original, but also the team that came before them, to the fans, and arguably the culture that surrounds the classic. Kinda like how a buffalo chicken pizza is arguably a love letter to me, and that it will kill me one day by clogging my arteries with its buffalo chicken cheesiness. Classic alert! Oh shit, boys, We got a Code Red Classic alert. 3 years of chemically imbalanced creativity made of glopping noises flowed endlessly into Days Gone. It's time to get freaky with freakers. Look at how polite this good boy is cheering on his friend as he mauls this man. They wait their turn!